Welcome, citizens of Gotham, to The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast focusing on all things The Dark Knight and his world. If you'd like to connect with the show, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TFR Batpod. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, or even suggestions for future episodes of the show, you can reach us by email at tfrbatpod@gmail.com. My name is Eric Carter, and I am your host, and we are here at last, finally, ready to talk about the brand new DC Universe film, The Flash. It has released officially, even though a lot of people already saw it beforehand, but it has officially released, and we are here to talk about it in spoilery and non-spoilery fashion. And when I say me, or we, I mean myself and my co-host. You guys hear him every time on these episodes. It's Mr. Joseph Fornerado. Joe, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. We have all finally seen The Flash in its entirety.
Yeah, in its entirety, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's good to finally be able to talk about a film that, I mean, some of us have seen 3-4 weeks ago by now.
Definitely. And I think, because we have one more person with us, I think he's seen it just the once. He'll have to confirm that. But returning guest, he's been with us many times before. It's my buddy, Matt Helen. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing good, Eric. And yeah, I've only seen it the one time, unlike some other lucky folks on this particular podcast. But yeah, so glad to be here and ready to talk shop with you guys.
Excellent. And yeah, Matt and Joe brought it up. Myself and Joe, we had seen the early screenings, and we're going to talk a little bit about that later because I have some thoughts about the early screenings and what impact that could have had potentially on the movie. But yeah, here we are. So without further ado, let's get into it. The brand new DC film, The Flash. All right, so we are going to start in a spoiler-free fashion because it is still kind of the opening frame of the movie. It's just been out this past weekend. The film released on June 16th officially. It is directed by Andy Muschietti, known from the It series, and it stars Ezra Miller. It stars Michael Keaton, Sasha Calle, Kiersey Clemens, Ben Affleck, Michael Shannon, and so many more. This movie has been in the works for years. Strangely, this movie was announced just shortly before the Flash TV series began, and it actually officially released here after 9 seasons of the Flash TV series has completed. So I think officially it's like 10 years since it was first announced that we finally have this movie, which is, there's a whole nother set of stories behind that, which everybody already knows. So we're not going to go over that. But I have 2 really good friends here. We've all been very excited for this movie. So to start, just spoiler free, so you guys don't have to be worried if you haven't seen it. Joe, let's start with you. Spoiler free. What did you think of The Flash?
I love this movie. It is up in my top tier rankings for the DCEU. I really just I want to say, like, it's hard for me to like talk about this without going into spoilers because I think I love the fact that I always talk about how these films need to have emotion for me, and this one definitely had the emotion that I was looking for. The one thing, first and foremost, this is a Flash movie. This borders on spoilers, kind of, but I don't think it does. a lot of the marketing was based on Batman, and we had those ongoing jokes about, oh, it's a Batman movie with the Flash. In my opinion, this is 100% a Flash movie that just so happens to have Batman and Supergirl in it.
Mhm.
And that, to me, I think was the most important thing coming out of this movie for me, was it focused on Barry, and the other characters serviced Barry's story, or served Barry's story. So that's, to me, that's what I really loved about this. And the humor is there, the emotion is there, the action is there. This film gave me a lot of stuff that I expected and a lot of stuff that I hoped for. It was pretty much the movie that we were promised, in my opinion. And I think maybe some people wanted more than that, which I don't know how much we can really get into that on why that is, or if that's warranted or not. Because to me, I think we were promised the movie and we got the movie we were promised. So I don't know how that could be a negative. I think I would have liked some things maybe surprised us more,
Mhm.
but I think that goes back to how we talk sometimes about how sometimes the second viewing is where you can really digest how you truly feel about a movie like this, because we amp ourselves up so much. And I can honestly say, after seeing it twice all the way through, I saw it a half a time, another time. I can get into that in a little bit on why I chose to do that. But after pretty much 3 viewings, I can honestly say this movie is exactly what I thought it was after my first viewing, and I probably like it even a little more after seeing it multiple times.
Very nice. I agree with quite a bit of what you said there, but we'll get into that first. Matt, I know you've seen it the one time, so just general spoiler-free thoughts. Give me an idea of your feelings on the Flash.
I kind of just echo what Joe said. I loved it. I think I texted you right after I saw it and said that it was um, that, like he said, top tier. It possibly, I mean, even, you know, very strong contender for my second like DCEU movie. Um, it is 100% a Flash movie. Um, and maybe when we like get in over the spoiler wall, like I'll go over it more. But like to me, it's even a Flash origin story almost, in a way, um, that I think is a really nice touch, and it it's a fun movie to watch, and it gives us um, it especially with all of the drama in the background and all the different iterations I'm sure that this movie went through during production. I I think it exceeds what anyone should expect, um, from what many people are expecting, from it. I think it's fantastic, and I'm ready to see, for my second and third viewings. Um, yeah, fantastic, especially with what they were given, and I was even as excited as I was very surprised with how much I liked it.
Nice. Yeah, so I echo a lot of what you said as well. For myself, I will fully admit, is this did I let some of my expectations run a little bit wild? Yeah, I did. Um, I on my first viewing, because I did see an early screening of this, I thought, you know, there were going to be some things that didn't happen. And after my first viewing, I was like, okay, it didn't happen. It's cool. And then after my second viewing, man, I really, really love this film. It is by no means, I talked about on our last episode when we covered Man of Steel, I've been waiting 10 years for a DCEU movie to top Man of Steel for me. And that still hasn't happened, just to be transparent. The Flash, it has not taken over the number one spot. I don't know, because we're coming up on the end here. We've got Blue Beetle and Aquaman too. I don't think, unless they're just phenomenal, I don't know that anyone's going to move that movie out of that seat for me right now. But I will say, The Flash did not have to be the best DCEU film for me. It just had to be great or good. And I got that. I don't know where it ranks yet. I'm going to have to sit on it for a little while before I decide that. But I will say, I think it's going to be pretty high on my ranking. And this cast killed it, in my opinion. And first and foremost, I know it's not popular to talk about this person, but Ezra Miller is phenomenal in this movie. Ezra plays two different versions of himself and plays it fantastically. They feel distinct as characters. Michael Keaton, it's like he never missed a step. He's wonderful. Sasha Kaye, while I don't think she's quite as impactful as some people may have led you to believe, she's wonderful. I just don't think there's enough of her, and that's not a spoiler. I mean, it is the way it is. But Michael Shannon, great as usual. I mean, this whole cast was wonderful, and there were surprises. So it was. I think this movie kind of suffered from being late in the game on the whole multiverse trend. Because everybody is going to have expectations of Spider-Man No Way Home or Doctor Strange or across the just released Across the Spider-Verse. So I think that is it is going to impact the film a little bit, but as a film itself, it's wonderful. And I highly suggest it. Go see it, because not enough of you have, according to the opening weekend box office. But yeah, so far as the movie itself, just before we go over the wall, Matt, Joe, is there anything else that you guys wanted to throw in, like kind of spoiler free, before we move on?
I don't know if this kind of falls into spoilers or not, but I want to push back a little bit on the whole multiverse comparisons, because I think that's unfair. Maybe that's a marketing issue with this movie, because to me,
it completely is.
It never occurred to me to compare this film to any of the movies you mentioned, because to me, this isn't a multiverse movie. And maybe that's blasphemy for me to say this, but that's not what I took away from this movie at all. To me, this is a Flash movie combined with Back to the Future. I don't think Back to the Future is a multiverse movie.
Yeah,
right?
It's perception, Joe. It's not what the movie actually is, it's perception.
Yeah, no, and I agree with what you said, because I think that it's what's being compared to it. Like, I've seen like people say like, "Oh man, how unfair is it that this came out right after Across the Spider-Verse?" And I'm like, "Why? I love both." Like, I don't understand, but that's, and we'll get more into that with the spoilers. But I think people, if you're still on the fence about going to see this because you're comparing it to other movies, I say just go into this and expect a good Flash movie. And don't compare it to other things.
Agreed. Like if you like the Flash, if you're a fan of the Flash, like this is a Flash movie. Go see the movie. You'll enjoy it. Like it's take the multiversal stuff out of it. Like we were talking kind of before we started recording. Joe, you said there's not really a movie, like it kind of stands on its own. And I would kind of agree. I think the only thing I would recommend someone watch, like I was talking to my dad about it, and I told him if he went to see it, like rewatch Man of Steel first, and that's pretty much it. And that's only like, and that's not even a prerequisite. You could still, you could still get the good Flash movie, but.
Well, and that's what I was saying earlier, is I think there's some benefit from watching some of those earlier films,
but it's
not a necessity at all. Yeah, because the Man of Steel stuff, I think they set it up very well and explain it well without you having to go back. They do a really
good job. It's a good job of like exposition in the movie. They're catching you up because they have to catch up the characters in the movie. So I think that's done really well there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a good point. If you guys have not seen The Flash, this is your hopping off point. I implore you, go out to the theater, support this film. It's worth your money and your time. So go see The Flash and then come back, because we are going to go completely into spoilers in 3, 2, 1. All right. We are in the Speed Force. We are over the spoiler wall. So we're going to talk openly about The Flash. The first thing and I want to get your guys because I know this is probably one of the most controversial points of the film. I wanted to talk performances. I want to start with Ezra Miller because, of course, everything that's been going on with Ezra, we're not going to talk about all that, but I mean, of course, that's forefront on people's minds. So just to lay it out there, I think Ezra, regardless, I mean, separating art and artist, Ezra Miller was phenomenal as the two versions and three versions of Barry Allen in this movie. He plays, his current timeline self. He plays a younger version of himself when he goes back in time to try to save his mother, because everybody knows that's what the premise of the movie is. And he runs into this younger version of himself, and I love that he kind of sees how annoying he can be at times through seeing this younger version of himself. So, Joe, I'll start with you. Just what did you think of Ezra Miller in this movie?
That was actually one of my favorite humorous beats of the film, was when he's like, "Oh, now I understand what everyone's thinking." Like, because, I don't want to get into the whole behind the scenes stuff with Ezra is what it is. I don't want to go down that road. I want to just talk about Ezra as an actor in this film, and I think he's unbelievable. I swear to you, when I first saw this film, I forgot that, like, I'm watching a film where there aren't two Ezras. Like, he's not a twin. Like, like, it never even occurred to me while watching it that he's not acting with himself. It is so seamless to me. And I've heard people say that there were a few spots that it looked iffy, and I on 3 viewings I haven't seen that. I think he was exceptional. You said distinct between the two main roles, and I agree. He's playing 2 different parts. Whether he's playing Barry or not, both times, it's a completely different version of Barry. And I love how he plays off of himself, which I can't even fathom that. Like, how do you have chemistry with nobody? Like, whoever is standing in for him must have great chemistry with him to even play that off. Just a really great job. And I do want to say that the stand-in needs credit too here, and I'm blanking on the name because I have seen it in the last few days. He deserves some credit too, because he's got to be playing a pretty big role there to make this happen and make it work as well as it did. But I love Ezra in this movie, and also it is a different take on Barry from the comics. I think with the general audience that shouldn't matter at all, because let's not pretend the general audience loves Barry Allen from the comics. I like to remind everyone that Robert Downey Jr. could not be further from Iron Man in the comics, but nobody cares. So let's not hold that against this version of Barry, because I think it works really well. I think it worked really well in Justice League, and I think it works here. I love the character, and I love what he's doing with it.
Well, and I will cut in and say that there was, on my second watch, I agree with you. I did not see any moments where the two Barrys were on screen where it was like, that doesn't look great. There was just one moment, and it didn't even look bad. It was just noticeable, and it's in the Batwing, when you get that forward facing shot of you see Batman in the center and you see the two Barrys in the back off to the sides. There's a moment there where the young Barry looks very kind of blurry, and it's like, okay, well that's a CGI effect. But like you said, I mean, for 95% of the movie, when those two are on screen, they look great. It's very hard to tell that it's a CGI creation there. But Matt, Ezra Miller, what did you think of the performance in the film?
He was one of, if not my favorite part of the movie. I mean, amazing performance. Just everything you guys have said, as far as just, it's astounding to me how well, like, I can't imagine as an actor, like, trying to, run through all of these scenes, through this entire movie, like, playing one character and then going back and shooting the exact same scene again, like. And I know this is not the first time it's been done, but I feel like it's done remarkably well for for this movie. Um, it I didn't I never had any, there was never any like blurry moments or anything like that where it just seemed off to me. I didn't even
Mhm.
notice um the one blip that you mentioned. Um, and it just like this is not, I've said before, like in the Justice League movie and the even Zack Snyder's Justice League, like I have not been the biggest Ezra Miller Barry Allen fan. It just is not really struck well with me from all the other renditions of Barry Allen's Flash that like I know. But this movie made
Mhm.
me fall in love with it. Like it separated him enough. He's not like that typical comic or like the animated like Justice League like Flash, you know, that I like grew up with, but it works in this universe, and it works even better now. I feel like, you know, if I go back and rewatch the, you know, the Justice League movies, like I'm gonna enjoy it even more because of the performance in this movie. And another thing that I want to point out, like as far as the like dual performances, it, is he does a really good job of kind of even his mannerisms and his almost his like little nervous twitches and things. I feel like are very prominent in the very beginning of the movie before the time split, or you know, him going back in time, versus where he ends up towards the end of the movie. Like
Mhm.
are you know, the main Barry and not the offshoot Barry, like he starts to become more grounded and more mature just in that, you know. And you can really start to see it's a side effect of what he's experiencing and what he's learning, but also what he's learning from teaching his younger self how to become the Flash, and kind of seeing that mirror, um, which is something that to me relates just in everyday life. I feel like everybody should be able to relate to that because, you know, teaching something that you know really starts to like ground your knowledge and skill in whatever it is you're teaching. And I feel like that was very evident to me watching the movie. And I think is endued not just to the writing but in his performance and how he displays that, because at the same time, you know, he's playing the other side of himself that is not learning from those lessons, and it shows the difference kind of in what um Barry, what his experiences through the main timeline Barry allowed him to learn this, and why his younger self has not, because he hasn't had those experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And the other kind of, I guess, controversial topic, which I wanted to get out of the way early, and I've already talked to Joe about this. I don't think I've brought it up with you, Matt. But this movie is 100% canon to Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I love that because there was this whole big thing like immediately after Zack Snyder's Justice League came out that, you know, there will be no more in this universe. You know, it's, and Justice League 2017 is canon. Blah 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 blah. Well, this movie, and it's not very thinly veiled. I mean, it's pretty critical early in the movie. It's the setup for the entire film. There's a conversation between Ben Affleck's Batman, Bruce Wayne, and Barry, where they're talking about the potential of going back in time. And Bruce Wayne mentions that Barry's done it in the past. And he kind of brings up the moment in Russia where he went back in time, which only happens in the Zack Snyder version of Justice League. And there's also there's a quick moment between Barry and Iris West, where she mentions, thinking she's seen him for a moment recently, and which is obviously a callback to Iris and Barry's scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, I mean, I was thrilled coming out of the theater the first time. I think that was my biggest sticking point. I was like, I can't believe they did this, but I love it. So, in reverse, we'll start with you, Matt, and just quick thought on that. Did you catch that in the theater, and what do you think of this being canon with Snyder's?
I caught both of the references. I don't think that I caught the fact that it was distinct for Zack Snyder's Justice League, because I'll be honest, it has. I watched that. I've only watched it through the one time, just because it's such a monster of a sit down. But I will say I have not watched the 2017 Justice League probably since I watched it the first time as well. So my lines are kind of blurred on what
What's in each one?
what is different between the two. Yeah. So I was, now that you pointed out, especially the Iris West thing, I distinctly now remember that being only in Zack Snyder's Justice League, because it was one of the the exposition that we got on expanded backstory we got for Flash and Cyborg. But I thought that the back in time thing, I thought that was also in the 2017 version. But if it's not, I'm very surprised that that's the route they went with, because in my head this whole time I've been thinking, well, okay, just remember this is going off of the the 2017, the official theatrical release of Justice League. Like, that's what I'm assuming is going to be canon.
Yeah, because the reversal of time, I would say, and Joe, you can speak to this. It's the critical difference in the ending act of the movie between the theatrical and Zack Snyder's version. I mean, the Flash turning back time is the critical difference between the two. Wouldn't you say so, Joe?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny now that I'm thinking about it. I can't even remember how the theatrical ends. Like, what is the big climax when they're all fighting? How do they? I don't even remember how they defeat Steppenwolf in the theatrical.
It's just Superman coming back, because you've got Barry pushing a truck full of people.
Yeah, I remember
that family out of the city. Yeah,
I don't even remember how they defeat Steppenwolf though. Did Steppenwolf die? Oh, the fear thing with the
the parademons.
That's right. But so yes, to me that is the biggest selling point, if you will, of Zack Snyder's Justice League, is the climax of that film is brilliant, and Barry is the one that makes the difference. I think that the way they did it was kind of and I don't mean this in a negative way, I mean it in a positive. It's kind of a have your cake and eat it too type of scenario, because most directors that have made a film post Justice League have said they consider Zack's movie or Zack's version the canon. But they haven't really explicitly gone one way or the other in their own films. Like, it could go either way. And I think in this film, this is the first one that explicitly mentions something that happened in Zack's film. But I think they're done in a way that if you've never seen it, it doesn't matter. So if WB wanted Justice League 2017 to be canon in the general audience's eyes, because they might not even know Zack's version exists, I think they're still okay. I'm glad for myself and for all of us that we now have concrete evidence that Zack's version is our version. It was always going to be anyway. I'm just glad it didn't contradict the other way, because that would have been really upsetting. So I said going into the film, I'm okay with you keeping it vague so both can work. I'm happy that it went in our favor. I would have been fine if it was just in the middle, though. But yeah, it was I didn't catch the Iris West thing the first time I saw it, but when they mentioned Russia, I lost it, and I can never remember the name of the city in Russia.
It starts with a P. I can't remember.
But I had just watched Zack's Justice League like literally the day before watching The Flash for the first time, so I remembered it when I heard it. I'm like, oh, that's it. Like I was Leonardo DiCaprio.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I was thrilled, and to me, knowing that now, I mean, it was always going to be the case for us anyway, but you watch Man of Steel, BVS, Zack's Justice League, and then this. That's a pretty complete story. And I know I've said this before, and this is kind of a little of a tangent. I love that if you're doing a rewatch or a character arc viewing of like one of your favorite characters, you can kind of do that with any of these characters in this universe in like maybe 2 or 3 or even 4 movies. I love that. Like you can, I mean, even with the Flash, you could technically just watch Justice League and then this movie without going into Man of Steel. Like there's so much fun stuff with this universe that still allows you to watch standalone things and get complete arcs also. But
Wait, and I guess technically, now that I'm thinking about it, like if you're a person who, and there are those out there, if you're the person who prefers the theatrical cut of Justice League over Zack Snyder's Justice League, I mean, the way this movie is explained, and I want to say this, the explanation of time travel and what happens when you do so is so well defined, and I love how they explain it. And the fact that Batman is the one to explain it, love that too.
the
Which of
spaghetti
course,
thing is brilliant.
the spaghetti, yes. But I guess thinking about it that way, you could look at it as well. There's a branch there's a piece of spaghetti where JL 2017 is the movie that leads into this. I guess you could look at it that way, right?
Well, and it also like doesn't like if you've never seen Zack Snyder's Justice League and you've only seen these movies in theaters, like the you may be like a little like if you catch the Bruce Wayne like Russia like reference, but at the same time like it doesn't take away like you can 100% only look at theatrical releases for the whole universe
Yeah.
and not lose anything. Like again, it goes back to what we were talking about, it standing on its own 2 feet, and not having to be dependent on any of the others. Like it doesn't, you know, it doesn't take away from anything, but it does kind of pay homage or like to the really hardcore fans that are always like, that do prefer the
Yeah.
Zack Snyder.
Well, you could also just
Justice
say
League.
if you never saw the Snyder version, you could just say, well, oh, they must have just had another mission that I didn't know about because they're clearly working together as the Justice League. So it could be anything.
Sure.
It doesn't need to be something we even saw on screen. I'm just glad we did. So
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I think it's a credit to Andy Muschietti where it is possible to look at it from all these different angles and talk. And speaking of Muschietti, I love what he did here with this movie. We talked about, I brought up how well explained the time travel is. And I did want to say, even though this is very much a Flash centric movie and Barry Allen is the main character, it's his story. This is a Batman podcast. So clearly we're going to talk about Batman. And there are what I contend are some of the best Batman moments ever put to screen in this movie. Now, I'm not going to say anything surpasses the Martha rescue because I don't think there are moments that do. But for both Ben Affleck, for the short time that he's in the movie, and Michael Keaton, their Batman or their Batmen get some extraordinary things to do in this movie. From the opening sequence, which is so fun. This might be the opening sequence of the movie where Ben Affleck's Batman is chasing Carmine Falcone's son through the streets of Gotham, and he's got Barry, saving this. He's taking care of this hospital in Gotham that's collapsing while he's trying to apprehend, Falcone's kid. This highway chase is so awesome and so comic booky. And then later in the film, we just get this awesome scene of Michael Keaton's Batman in this Russian or wherever they are, the silo. These scenes are some of the best visual Batman scenes we've ever gotten, and it makes me so excited that Andy Muschietti is now going to be the director of The Brave and the Bold. So, just thoughts on that, Matt? What did you think of the Batman action in this movie?
Um, First of all, I loved Keaton's Batman and his introduction. Um, the whole fight scene in the kitchen uh, with the two berries and Keaton looking like um, uh, the dude. Jeff Bridges is the dude, and just kicking ass in his flip flops. I thought that was one of the most entertaining sets uh, for the entire movie for me.
By the way, I'm glad you brought
Um,
that up because I
and
think
I
that was Megan's favorite part of the movie. She keeps bringing up Michael Keaton's flip flops. So just wanted to say that.
um, but yeah, like I especially love the take on Keaton's Batman. And I think his performance really kind of showed it, where it's like we get a we get a successful Batman. We get a Batman that's in retirement, not because he's jaded and worn out and lost so much, but because he kind of won. Like he he, I mean he won. Like he stopped being Batman because Gotham didn't need Batman anymore. Um, and I think that was a really cool way to to do it, instead of kind of treading over this whole, like, not that it's a bad story arc, because I mean we all love the Dark Knight Returns and stuff, but like it's it's just it's a fresh take, and it's something I'm glad Keaton got as kind of for I'm assuming we're all assuming that this is his you know last foray as a Cape Crusader. Kind of, I think it's a nice way to end it, and a nice different take.
I would assume it's the
um
last for Affleck and Keaton.
yeah. But I mean, you never know in
Yeah.
Hollywood, so that's why I just throw that in there. But I mean, I honestly, I wouldn't want to see any more from Keaton, because this is such a good way, I feel like, to go out and show kind of how his Batman ended up. Um, Now for the, I'm gonna kind of go contrary uh to you guys. You're probably gonna uh kick me off the show and re-record this whole thing, but I like the sequence of the, like, chase. Um, but as far as like the practicality of, like, Affleck's suit and kind of his performance, like, in the bat suit, it was probably one of my nitpicks for the film. Um, it just was not, um like, the close-ups and stuff of him, like, on the bridge, and um it just something just seemed off about it. Um, which is, I know, is kind of a shame. Like, I love what the conversations with him and stuff, like, as
Mhm.
Bruce Wayne. Um, and I think part of it might have been just the suit just didn't seem, it seemed like very ill-fitting, and just didn't, I really did not like the suit, especially, which again kind of sucks, because I love the colors. I love that we got to see the blue and gray on Batman, but I feel like I wish we had seen it on a little bit better developed suit.
Well,
Um,
I
And
will say I was speaking purely from an action standpoint there, but I will agree with
yeah,
you that this suit's it's way too busy for me.
it's like it tries to be classic, but then like a
Yeah,
bunch of
and
like modern, just like random stuff like thrown on it, and it just doesn't.
I still
Um,
fail to understand why we just can't just take the BVS suit, and if you want to do blue and gray, make the cowl and the cape gray or blue. Excuse me, because
yeah,
BVS the Batman suit was perfection, and they have failed to live up to it ever since. But and I do think it's because if you've noticed, Affleck's uncredited in the film. None of the merchandise looks like him. So I don't even know if they made a new suit for him in particular in this movie, or if most of it was made for the stunt doubles. Because you're right, it doesn't look great when it's in the close-ups on Affleck when it's just him standing on the bridge talking. But action-wise, I think it was great Batman action.
oh yeah, yeah. I would definitely agree.
So Joe, I'm going to give you your turn now. The Batman action in the film. What did you think? And you can give us a rebuttal on the on the look of the suit if you want.
No, I agree with the suit. I will say the action in the first scene I love. And I think
Mm-hmm.
too many people, again, my opinion, too many people are focusing on the quote unquote poor CGI in certain cases in that chase. But there is a lot of awesome practical action in that scene too. And yes, it does kind of jump back and forth. And yeah, like, I mean, unless you really wanted like a stunt double doing that stuff that Batman was doing and risking his life more than he should be, there's really nothing you can do in that case. But I think they deserve credit for some of the practical stuff that was in that scene too. There was a lot of great practical chase there. And I will say, as far as the suit goes, I don't like the design of the suit, but I don't think that's what bothers me because I could have gone with it. I do wonder because we've seen that suit, like we've seen the stunt double in the costume. There was a practical suit there. I question whether it looks poor because of the color correction to make it blue, or there's something about when Ben Affleck is in the suit, the cowl and the cape look almost completely CGI. Like it's got a gloss over it. Like I've complained about like the Spider-Man suit before. It seems like it has like a CGI gloss over it. So I don't know if that's the color correction that just didn't work or if it was strictly like a CGI cowl cuz there was a lot of like it seemed flat. Like there was no texture to the cowl or the cape. So I don't know what the deal is with that. But again, I can look past that stuff. Like yeah, it's a little disappointing, but in a movie where like there's it's a 2 hour and 24-minute movie, the poor CGI in certain aspects of that scene amount to what? 2 minutes of screen time, maybe. Where like I'm loving all
Yeah.
the other stuff that we're getting, like the action with Batman. That like you can't do certain things practically. So yes, some CGI might look iffy, but also the movie can't cost 500 million. This isn't Avatar, so they're
Yeah.
gonna have to cut corners somewhere. And when it's happening that fast and it's just going and going and going. Okay, fine. It doesn't look perfect. It is what it is. I still love what we're getting from Batman in those scenes. I love that we get our Wonder Woman cameo there at the end. Um, do I wish the suit looked better? Yeah, of course I do. I'm with you. Why make it busy just to make it different for the bike? And I get like I don't know. Like they feel they need to make it a practical protective gear for the bike for some reason, but I don't even think it looked that bad in context. I think it's just something about it didn't look right.
Yeah.
I so about the like the I will say I think if you just had there are specific like shots in the chase scene where like that armor plating and stuff does come into play um
Mm-hmm.
like when he gets like when he ditches the bike and gets like is just being pulled behind the Humvee like he would have been shredded. Like I mean I don't care what kind of like Batman plot armor you give him, like if you didn't have something on that suit like to explain that, that would have taken, we would have been like, oh, the suit looked great, but it completely took me out of it whenever he got drugged across the pavement and the suit's like completely clean. So like I get that, it just didn't seem like what they put on it really meshed with the suit. It didn't look like something Bruce Wayne or Alfred like would have like, or Lucius Fox like would have like put on the suit. And as far as the cow, like if it was a strictly CGI cow, they went above and beyond to make it look like it didn't fit on Affleck's face. Is was like one of my like.
Well, I chalk that up too because if you watch some of the later scene, like the post shot scenes in Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Mhm.
his face doesn't fit the cowl anymore, and I don't think they've molded a new cowl for him.
Gotcha.
He's lost weight in his face, and I did notice that when they were talking on the bridge, the cowl just doesn't fit his face.
But
Yeah,
I
he
don't
does.
think
He
that's
does.
what bothers
Yeah.
me though. I think it's the cowl itself. I think his face is CGI. In like the close-ups when he's on the bike and he's talking to Barry, that's the part where it almost seems like the ADR doesn't fit his mouth. That's a little shaky. But again, it's, to me, that's not bad CGI. It's like, all right, it doesn't line up a little bit. I can move on.
Yeah.
But to me, the cowl itself looks poorly lit. I don't even care about his face looking weird in the cowl as much as like you said in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah, it clearly doesn't look like it fits right, but this looks almost like it looks fake as opposed to not fitting right to me. But again, I feel like we've spent too much time on this already because I don't even care.
We won't
Yeah.
beat that to death. But you did bring up Wonder Woman, so I did want to I want to talk about that really quickly because that's one of my biggest nitpicks of the movie. I don't like the Wonder Woman moment. For me, it feels like every time now it's starting to feel like every time she pops up, they hit the music, and it's just kind of a little bit of diminishing returns. I think they know that how impactful that first Wonder Woman movie is, and that of course her showing up in that that big scene in Batman versus Superman was so awesome when that music kicks in, and it just feels like they're trying to replicate that all the time now. And I don't know, her pulling them up on the bridge, it's like, did she really need to be there at that point? I know
Yes.
they were trying to get the Justice League back together thing. I don't know. It didn't hit the right chords for me. It felt a little like, okay, well, we got to get Wonder Woman in here because it's the Justice League and we don't have Henry. So I don't know. You guys can speak to that, but it just didn't hit well with me this
I'll
time.
fight you on that.
So
I disagree completely.
the way I look at it is kind of like I feel like it does do the movie justice, at least setting up that like first part of the world, because she kind of comes in like someone else from the Justice League besides, it gives a presence other than just the like the shot we get of Superman on the TV or whatever being busy doing whatever else. But then I kind of like, okay, well, why Wonder Woman? And it may be like you said, like they're trying to get as much of that nostalgia, like kind of play in it. But also, like, if we kind of look at the politics and stuff behind this movie, like it, you you're not getting Cyborg because of that reason. You're not getting Henry, because of, again, similar reasons. Because I feel like if you had a Superman, like honestly, I feel like Superman would have served just as much of a that role and may have been even more impactful because of what happens later on in the movie where we find out he doesn't even exist and he's dead after Barry goes back in time. But because you can't get him, well, you could definitely get Momoa. Like I could definitely see him. He's kind of just a hell yeah, like I'm on it. But does it really fit in? Like what really could Aquaman have come in and done that would have fit in the scene? So then you have Gal, who's probably just as willing as Jason is to come in and do all of it. Um,
Well,
so
I
like
I,
for that. But I
I
think
think my biggest issue there is it feels like the others were supposed to be there. Like
Yeah.
it's glaring for me because I know that there were scenes shot with Cavill that were cut.
Hmm.
And I don't know if it was post credit or what it is, but
Wait,
like it
I'll push back on
feels
that.
like
Why do you know that?
no. Well,
How do you
excuse
know
me.
that?
It's been speculated that it's been speculated.
Okay, that doesn't mean it happened.
Whatever.
So
No, I'm not. Okay, I apologize. It's been speculated that there were scenes shot with Cavill that are not in the
and
film.
from what we know,
But
so
my point is, this bridge scene feels like it's supposed to be a big, the Justice League back together
Mhm.
moment there, and you get three of them. And yes, it's amazing anytime you see Gal Gadot on screen as Wonder Woman. I understand that, but my biggest thing was, my second viewing, I'm sitting here beside someone who loves Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman probably more than anybody I know, because my wife is a huge fan of especially the first Wonder Woman movie. She even adores Wonder Woman 84, which a lot of people can't say. And she even got a little excited when she popped up in Shazam. And then she pops up similarly here, and she's just like, eh. And that shocks me. So
okay, let's flip the release times.
I can agree, exactly. So I can agree with that. I think the releases being so close together probably hurts that, but also the films weren't filmed with that in the back of their mind either. So and to me, it never occurred to me that I thought the rest of the Justice League should have been there. That didn't occur to me. I think in the film it explains away everyone enough for me. And to me, it reminds me of, I keep making these Marvel comparisons today. I don't know why. It reminds me of Age of Ultron, where they're just working as a team, but everyone's kind of doing their own thing, so they kind of get together when they can. And in this case, it was pretty much wrapped up, but Superman was still doing his thing. It's not really, worth it for Aquaman to come there. It's not, a water thing or anything. We don't know where Aquaman is. So it makes sense for Wonder Woman to be the one to come in and save him real quick and just kind of do her thing. Now, to me, I can understand why you might not like the scene itself, but I think her being there, I'll take her in anything. I don't care. And I think it also would have meant more if we didn't get spoiled on her scene in Shazam.
Yeah, I think if you just switch the release dates, like if you hadn't already seen her in Shazam, like it would have been it wouldn't have even like crossed your mind, because I feel like for this movie, if you isolate it from that, and I'm not saying she shouldn't have been in Shazam, because I feel like her role there is actually kind of critical to the ending.
Yeah, that's more important.
The
Shazam role is definitely more important.
Yeah, but I think to me it feels like it didn't bother me, because like I said, it kind of sets the tone, this post like Justice League like world, and kind of sets like it makes the fact that when Barry messes up time and none of these soups meta humans are around, it kind of sets up what you're missing, and kind of the aftershocks of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, and it could be never really thought about that, but that to me that is a really good point, because you're setting up the fact that Barry relies on these people.
Yeah, and like, well, I mean, even if you like, if Barry hadn't have been there, like Batman called Barry in for a reason, because Batman couldn't stop the hospital from collapsing, but he also couldn't and catch, Falcone's son like running off with a virus. So like, if you take any of these people out of the equation, shit goes bad. Like, you take Wonder Woman out of it, and Batman and Falcone fall into the river, and the virus gets into the water system anyway. You take Batman out of it, and obviously, like, we don't even get to that point, because someone either stops him or the hospital, like, and all these babies and stuff die. Like, and that's kind of what the consequences, or further consequences, of Barry's time jump.
Yeah, and just to move past all that, because we know what happened there. But I do love that ultimately what this sets up is that Batman is kind of this mentor figure for Barry. And it leads to this conversation between Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne, and Barry, which we kind of touched on a little earlier, but to kind of expand on that a little bit. He basically, Barry is in this constant thought process because his dad's appeal is coming up, for the alleged murder of Nora Allen, and Barry's been trying for years, appeal after appeal, to get his dad out of prison, because he just firmly believes that his dad has been wrongly incarcerated for this. And we see this moment while he's talking to his dad on the phone, where he goes back in time, and he does see that what happens in the past, and it's just, he goes back briefly, and he talks to Bruce about it, and he's kind of trying to talk Bruce into talking him into actually doing it.
Can I push back for a second? He doesn't go back in time there. He's just envisioning that.
Okay, well, he said he went back a day. Oh yeah, he went back in the baby scene. You're right. He went back in time briefly in the baby scene. But he's talking about the possibility of going back to save his mom. And then he even says something, he tells Bruce, well, I could save your parents. And Bruce kind of lays out for him, the things that have happened, basically paraphrasing, but he says the things that have happened kind of happen for a reason, and they make us who we are. And you could, this is in the trailers, you could destroy everything if you do what you're thinking. But Barry can't be perturbed at this point, or he can't be stopped. And he does go back in time. And I don't know. I love the whole setup there. I love the conversation between those two. And it may be, I don't know, it may be some of the best Ben Affleck, Bruce Wayne stuff that we've had. So that whole conversation, I just wanted to get you guys' thought on, how they set it up. And there's a key phrase in here, because I think Barry asks Bruce, would you want to go get a bite to eat? And Bruce says, not this time. Maybe. What does he say, Joe? Because you really picked up on this on your third viewing.
Not this time, maybe some other time.
Maybe some other time, yeah. Which comes back later in the film. But what did you think, Joe? What do you think of this conversation between the
I absolutely love this scene. The action in this film aside, because it's all brilliant, in my opinion. I think this scene and the final scene in the grocery store are my two favorite scenes of the film. I think the grocery scene the grocery store scene at the end takes the cake for me, but this one, I love everything about this scene from a Batman fan. This may be, I'm with you, this may be my favorite Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck stuff. He's done so much good stuff as Batman. I love some of his Bruce Wayne stuff too, but the pain and the emotion on his face, almost like he wants to just hug Barry and say, I know what you're going through, and I've been there, and trust me, it's not gonna, you can't do this to yourself. And he says, take it from a lonely old man, you can't let this ruin you, because all I've done, it just made me a bitter, angry old man with the mistakes I've made. And I love everything about this. And it's funny because Affleck has said he finally got the part, he finally understood his role as being Bruce Wayne in making this movie. But he mentioned the Wonder Woman scene. To me, this is the scene where he nailed it. This is, to me, I don't know if he got the two scenes mixed up, or if he truly believes he got the lighthearted stuff down in the Wonder Woman scene, because I think he's just having fun in that scene. And then this is where the emotional crux of the character is at the forefront. And I just love the scene. I love everything about the scene. That line where it comes back later, because I didn't catch it the first time I saw the film. Just brilliant. I love everything about it. And just the fact that Barry is hey, do you want to get something to eat? And I think Bruce wants to, but he knows for lack of a better term, he's just not that guy. He's it's almost like he's past It's like when you're just an older guy and you're just like, yeah, I'm not going out for pizza. Like, no.
Yeah, it's just like he's like, no, I've already had too much of people
Yeah,
together for
or
one
not
day.
only that, like not even in the
nah.
trivial sense of like, you know how like, like I'm 36 years old now, and like if a 20-something-year-old kid was like, hey, like you want to go out and get a drink, it's like, no, man, I'm going home and go to bed. Like, like it's just
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love everything about it. I think the two actors there are just killing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Matt? Thoughts on the conversation between Bruce and Barry?
I think it's the perfect like foreshadowing like for what we're all expecting to happen and like expecting Barry to like learn and like get to, because it's like Bruce is already at that point where he understands like he says, like, what happened um in the past is like what has led us to be where we are today and be the people that we are, and stuff. And it literally is the whole like moral and the like I said, foreshadowing sets the slate for the rest of the movie. And it's a nice little setup for what Barry kind of comes to realize to a degree at the end of the movie, because he still can't resist trying to alter something to save his parents instead of letting it um, go back to flowing naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But um, it sets kind of the contrast of, I'm sure, I feel like Affleck does a good job of showing a Bruce that sees in Barry a younger Bruce Wayne that had that same mindset of, you know, what would I do to bring back and save my own parents, and kind of in a way like, what he did, like Bruce was just blessed with access to money instead of access to the Speed Force, so I mean, he kind of, the whole Batman thing was because of his parents. So um
Yeah, and I think
yeah,
that's
I think it's wonderfully set
and
up.
I think that's a good point, because it almost you almost see it working in Bruce's mind. What would I do if I had his abilities?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you kind of see that. Um, but yeah, that becomes kind of the crux of the film, because Barry does, I mean, there's some steps in that we're going to miss in the story beats, but we're not going completely through the story. But in essence, he does end up going back in time, and it causes all kinds of problems. And he learns about branching. I love the way that Keaton explains it later in the movie, where it's not branching timelines, what it's intersections,
Mm-hmm.
where all these events, it's like he said it's like spaghetti, because I love when he throws the spaghetti in the plate, and he's like, there's some of the strands run parallel, but eventually there are certain intersections that are going to happen in each and every timeline. And that for me is just I love the way that they make that example, because it really lays out and clearly defines the rules of time travel in this world. So like, and we find out later in the movie, that because when they end up going against Zod, and they're trying to, Supergirl and the Flash and Keaton's Batman, they're trying to stop Zod, and the same thing keeps happening over and over and over again. And Barry realizes this is the intersection, so it's a callback back to the spaghetti, and how this is inevitable. It's going to happen every single time, and I can't stop it. And it kind of goes back to the Superman conundrum. You have all this power, but you cannot save everyone. And it's kind of similar here, where the Flash has all this power. He can reverse time, but there's certain things that even him with all these abilities, he cannot change. And it's going to happen over and over and over again. So, open to you guys. What do you think of how they set up time travel and how the ramifications work in this movie?
Well, I love the parallel hard spaghetti, like the dry spaghetti. I think that's the first. We talked about it on the Flashpoint Paradox episode, where when you mess with the future, it changes the past, because I think that's explained so well by just taking the two parallel, dry spaghetti, uncooked spaghetti, and you turn it so it affects, and he points to both sides. it's to say like, yeah, just because if you mess with a point in time, it messes with everything. Um, I think that was a great way of explaining it visually, as opposed to just how in Flashpoint Paradox, Eobard just says it and you just kind of go with it.
Hmm.
I think everything about the way they handle time travel in this is great. I think it's so fun to see the changes in the universe he created. Just to go to that real quick, like I'm sorry, the Eric
Eric
Stoltz
Stoltz.
joke is the best joke in the movie. That is
It is.
hysterical. I wonder how many people don't get that though, because we're movie nerds. Like that's so obvious to us. Why that's funny? Do other people just think, oh, why would they not have casted Michael J. Fox? Like, do they not even know who Eric Stoltz is? Like, I love that
That's a
joke.
good question. Matt, did you get that?
I don't like full. I feel like I don't fully know the joke,
Okay,
but I'm
that's awesome.
assuming that Eric Stoltz was supposed
So
to
he
be.
Yes,
filmed
he was
most of the
originally
movie
cast as
already,
Marty
Yeah.
McFly. Yeah.
and there is footage
Okay,
of
that's
him
what I.
as Marty McFly in the movie. Or I'm sorry, not in the. Well, yeah, actually, there is like there's part of the film he's actually in it, but you don't see his face, obviously. But he filmed a good portion of the movie, and they said like it wasn't working, and they called Michael J. Fox back because originally Michael J. Fox couldn't do it because of scheduling, and it's a pretty crazy story.
Gotcha. I figured
Yeah.
figured it was something like that, and I meant to look it up, but
Yeah, it's a really
but I
What's
didn't.
great though, is that's the biggest sticking point for Barry. All these other things have changed, and he's like, "What? Michael J. Fox is Marty McFly." I love that. That's what messes up his mind the most.
And
the
quick thing with the Great Balls of Fire in so it was a chain reaction of Top Gun was Kevin Bacon, or was it Patrick Swayze was Top Gun? It was a whole bunch of chain reactions of things, and it was Great Balls of Fire was in Top Gun.
But I feel like it was a lot of references that are like
Oh,
memes
yeah.
now from people.
Yeah.
Like either they were in consideration for it and stuff. That's what I took out of it. I was like, oh, okay, but this is the universe where all these like would be
It was great.
castings and
Yeah, I
stuff
thought it was great.
happened. And I think it like stuck and was a good way to like segue into all of the like the
Mhm.
bigger changes, because it was like, Barry kind of expects, oh well, this would be different because I didn't have this or anything, and then it's kind of like, but why would Marty McFly be somebody completely different?
Exactly. That's why it's
Kind
just
of
funny to me.
like,
Yeah.
why would me saving my mom have anything to do with who got cast
Exactly.
as Marty McFly? Like that makes no sense, and that's what's kind of blowing
Mhm.
his mind. Like, um, and as far as like the time travel thing goes, I love the spaghetti analogy because it's like before, before Barry went back in time at all, we did just have, just the one strand. But now because of him going back, I feel like it kind of shows that there is no, especially the ending of the movie is, okay, so he goes back in time, um, and drops the spaghetti in his mom's cart so that she doesn't send his dad out. So then she doesn't die.
Tomatoes.
So okay, well then to fix it, or yeah, tomatoes. Sorry. um, he goes back, and to fix that, he takes the tomato can back out. But then and let's just say that he didn't rearrange the shelving and stuff at the end of the movie to save his dad, so you see his dad's face. He's already gone back in time once and now had to go back a second time and change. So now we've got 2 to 3 different occurrences of someone interfering with it. Eh, that kind of just, there is no going back. There is no going back and undoing what's already kind of been done, which is again compounds on the moral of the story is you can't like change, like you can change things, but it doesn't mean you're automatically changing them for the better, and you can't really take back those actions. And it kind of just, like I said, I feel like he could go back and he could rearrange the spaghetti a third time to, so he could go back again after he's realized that stuff is still messed up and put all the tomato cans back on the bottom shelf or the lower shelf. Well, now that could still have messed things up yet again and not get us back to where we
Can
were.
we talk about the ending then? Do you want to jump into that real quick, or do you want to go in order?
No, yeah, we can absolutely talk about it. Are you talking about the very end of the film?
Well, just what Matt was saying with the implications of him. He knows he has to go back and let his mom die. Best part of the movie for me, hands down. I've cried every time I've seen it. But he then decides, okay, I have to let my mom die because that'll change everything back, he thinks, prior to that moment. Or it'll fix, the major stuff. But he thinks, okay, but if I just put the tomatoes on the top shelf, that'll just clear my dad from the point I decided to go back in time forward. That'll change that. It won't change anything drastically past that. So I think I wanted to discuss whether you guys feel, did he expect changes to occur while doing that and accepted that it was worth the risk to get his dad off? Or was he completely caught off guard by anything that would have changed from doing that? In my opinion, I feel like Barry accepted that by him doing that, it would probably mess with things a little bit, but he was willing to go with it because he had to let his mom die. He had to try something to save his dad that he felt was much more minimal than what would have happened to his mom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have
I think that's my favorite part of the movie because I think it's up for interpretation. I don't think there is an answer to that. And I like that. I like that there is no answer to that. And I know some people hate that. Some people don't like to actually have to think about this stuff and not have an answer. Where to me, I love the fact that we don't know what he's thinking in that situation. We don't know if he knew that was going to happen or not. So I love that we can kind of discuss that and wonder what happened or why it happened. Like, is it like Matt was just saying how it didn't matter whether he moved those tomatoes or not. It could have still been surprise George Clooney at the end, whether he moved the tomatoes or not.
Well, my thing is, it can be a slight nitpick because he does seem extremely surprised when it's a different Bruce Wayne at the end of the movie. But he just got done explaining to the other Barry, we can't keep doing this. We have to reset things, or it could destroy everything. And yet it's either that he still doesn't understand or that he did decide to make that choice. But it seems like it's that he still doesn't quite understand because he's still shocked when George Clooney shows up at the end. So it could be a little bit of a nitpick.
Yeah, see, I didn't take it that way. I didn't take it that he was shocked that things changed. I think he was shocked because he was like, who the hell is that? Like, he didn't think people were going to change physical appearance. You know what I mean? Like, who would have expected that? He hadn't experienced that.
Well, Wonder Woman.
So, what do you mean?
Because the Wonder Woman he found in the Young Barry's world was not Gal Gadot.
Wait, what?
I think that's just bad. I think that's just bad
that,
Google search.
no,
like,
that was,
yeah, I mean, you could probably find something.
Yeah,
similar
no, that's
on,
that's not what that was. That was
like,
just he just happened to Google Wonder Woman. Okay. I forgot about that. I didn't know what you were talking about.
I think it's kind of like I like Joe's take on it as far as like, because like when he's changing the tomatoes, he may be thinking, well, this is not going to affect anything that hadn't happened yet because it's like in my timeline, my dad's appeal hadn't
exactly
happened. So like maybe if I can just do this, it won't change. I'm not stopping anybody doing anything that's going to stop someone from, it's not that big.
He didn't know about the 6-year-old that couldn't reach the tomatoes now for their mom, and it killed their mom instead. Like, so.
Yeah, and it's more of a like, and the thing is, his mom surviving shouldn't have changed the fact that like we got like
exactly.
Keaton's where like I don't think he grasped the fact that you've now created this, you've gone from one single nice and easy timeline to like this mess of spaghetti that's just all like, and it's not there. But my nitpick with it is like kind of like what Eric was saying was we've gone through this whole movie of him trying to learn and trying to like realize I can't change this without making a bigger mistake, like, or making having without it having even greater. I can't use this much power to make such a powerful change, because it is. I mean, altering time like that, like, that's a huge thing, and uh, without it having consequences. And it's like, okay, we grasp that. We have the whole scene with his mom, and then it's like 5 seconds later, he's still falling into like temptation. It's almost like it's almost like that alcoholic that finally like gets through, their 12-step program, and is like, okay, like, I understand it now. And then someone asks them, hey, you want to go grab drinks like tonight to, celebrate whatever, and they're like, you know what, yes I do, like, kind of thing, and just like completely relapses and forgets about everything else. It just doesn't. It kind of undoes um the whole concept of
Well,
the
yeah,
the learning
because
process
I mean, ultimately,
of the movie.
I think it just boils down to he can't help himself. He has to try to make at least some part of this right. Because I joked about the Wonder Woman thing before, but yes, he absolutely did see a huge difference, and it's the crux of the movie is him going to get Batman, because he finds out, whoa, this is not the Batman I know. So clearly, he does see that there can be radical differences. So I think it just boils down to he can't help himself, and he has to try to save his dad. He knows that he can't save his mom. And I think in part of his brain, it's like, okay, well, dad still goes to the store. So the only thing that changes is he's seen on the camera. So at least he doesn't go to prison. So maybe that is a slight enough change where all of this won't be affected. But we see at the very end when we see George Clooney instead of Ben Affleck that clearly it does. But yeah, I mean, just to go back a little bit, I did want to talk about the whole thing with Zod. I love the setup of, and it's one of the huge changes as well, because we don't have Superman in this world. We have Supergirl. So I love that it harkens back to Man of Steel, and that Zod is he's not really the big bad, because Barry's decisions are the big bad in this film. But you have this problem of that they have to take out Zod, and they find Supergirl. And she's kind of like Superman in the Flashpoint story. She's been locked away. She's been captured when she landed. She's been locked away all this time, and they have to rescue her. And she doesn't want a part of this until she sees what Zod is doing to the world, and what he wants to do. So just kind of revisiting, the Zod story point. What did you guys think of Zod being kind of the obstacle in this movie? Joe, you can start us off.
I'll be honest, I was a little underwhelmed with the Zod stuff in this movie. I expected, I think, more of it. But what we got, I think, served the story. It was like, we didn't get Zod as the big bad, like you said. That's not the point of this story. But I think they served the purpose well to give Barry something that he had to fight for in this alternate timeline. And I think what they were given, they're scary as hell. They're vicious. There's no, they're relentless. I think we get some really good Flash stuff in that scene. And I think we get enough of the Zod stuff and the whole army. But I think I probably could have used a little more of them, if I'm being honest. But again, it's a nitpick. It's something small, because I don't think it's necessary. It's just me wanting more, because it's Michael Shannon as Zod, it's Feora, and Jay Trow as Feora, who I loved. I would have liked to have seen more of them, but again, they serve the purpose. They do what they're supposed to do there, and it was fine.
Yeah, for me, it was just seeing them again was exciting, and seeing them, do what I honestly got exactly what I expected, because I didn't think Zod was going to be a big bad for the movie, because I I thought Dark Flash was going to be more of a big bad. But even he's just a product of young Barry trying over and over and over again to save the world, or to save his world and his mom. It's really, like I said, it's Barry's decisions that is the antagonist of this film. But Matt, what did you think of the whole Zod story plot?
I love seeing it again. And I love how they harken back to like the meeting and stuff, like with the military and things, and how that turns out differently because of um you don't have
Superman.
we don't have Kal-El there. Yeah, we don't have Superman there. We don't have someone to act as a liaison kind of for us. And of course, like one of my favorite things, like I love anytime we have Kryptonians fighting. Like that's especially done in this universe. Like it's one of my favorite things about Man of Steel. Um, it's always a spectacle and it's always fun. And kind of like Joe, like I wish we could have got a little bit more. I did feel like there wasn't as much, but at the same time, I can't say, well, this is a Flash movie and it be a Flash movie and we have
Yeah, exactly.
half the movie. We have a huge Act 3 like we did in Man of Steel of Kryptonians battling. Like if I want to see that, I'll go back and watch Man of Steel. But I loved how it was done and how we kind of got to see a couple of different takes with with them going back and and learning kind of, okay, well, their suits will actually kill them. And I thought that was a nice touch too, because it's like in my head I'm like, okay, like how are we gonna, like if they're gonna beat him, like how are we actually gonna beat him, like without having, especially after they killed Kara for the first time. I was like, well, okay, there went the only person on Earth that can break Zod's neck,
Mm.
and put these people down. And so I liked how we kind of had pseudo kryptonite with their suits, and as soon as I saw Barry get the piece stuck in his arm, it clicked, and I was like, oh, that's like I kind of knew where things were going, but it didn't take from it when it actually happened.
Yeah, and I will say, since we're talking about, Joe, you said you were a little underwhelmed with the Zod um, part of the movie. I will say I was, even though I do think she performed the part admirably. I think Sasha Kaya, with what she was given, she was great. I was a little underwhelmed with Supergirl in the movie. And I don't think you can make it a focal point, just like you can't make Batman the focal point of the movie. It is Flash's movie. But I think this is one of the things where the anticipation and everything that I was hearing coming into the movie about how, Sasha Kaye was a standout in this movie, and she was the shining performer. I guess after hearing all that, and especially seeing some of the comments from people who saw the early releases before I did, were just all this praise on Sasha Kaye. And then I saw the movie. I'm like, well, she's good, but I don't feel like all that was necessarily warranted. And I don't know, Joe, you saw an early screening. You saw one before I did. So you can speak a little more on that. But I was a little underwhelmed with her inclusion in the movie.
So what I just gathered from that, you don't like Wonder Woman, you don't like Supergirl, so you don't like women, Eric. What the hell? Like,
No, I wanted more of Sasha Kaye, is what I'm saying.
so, and I'll be honest with you, I'm the complete opposite with her as I am with Zod with you. I loved her in this, and I think it's because my expectations for her were kind of in check, where I was anticipating Zod more than her. And I gotta say, the only other part in this film where I get teary-eyed is her talking to the two Barrys about how she came to realize that she's going to fight with them. I love that scene. That is so my.
That's the
that'll
only
be
part,
my
not the grocery store scene.
no. Besides the grocery store scene, sorry, that's the other time where I cried was that scene.
Okay.
The that scene to me is perfect. I love everything about it. I could have done without Second Barry saying Supergirl, oh, it means hope. Like that little bit of a humorous beat in the middle of that emotional scene. That's my one nitpick with the humor in this movie, because I feel like that was the only time they ever kind of undercut something with a joke. But her performance in that scene to me was perfect. I love her in that scene. I think she showed great range between the anger of the scene with Zod and that one with the heart and taking care of Barry and telling her how important it is for her to still be a good person and recognizing that Zod is not what her planet is about. So I personally, that scene hit with me. And I think she's badass for the rest of the movie too. I got what I expected. I got more than what I expected out of her. And before we move on to let you guys talk, I got to say too, I think she is stunning in this movie, like beautiful. I
Oh,
was
she's
like
gorgeous.
distracted. I was distracted by how beautiful she looked in that suit. I got to be honest with you, but I think her performance was incredible. I loved her in this, and I do hope we get more of her going forward because I think she did a fantastic job.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing is I think I wanted more of her, which is a good problem to have. But
Absolutely.
I will say,
And I was just joking with you. I know
I
what you
know.
were trying to say. I just felt like I got enough out of her because again, I go back to that. It is a Flash movie. And it's weird because again, like I'm the complete opposite of you with Zod and her. It's like I think our expectations affected both of our perspectives on that.
Yeah, and I will say one of her best pieces of acting in the movie doesn't even include dialogue because it's when she's floating above the sky with the whole military scene where Zod is meeting the military.
Yep.
And when he starts attacking, just
Oh yeah.
the acting on her face when she realizes what's happening and what Zod is, I think that's some of the best acting she did in the movie, and there's not even a line of dialogue. But anyway, what did you think of Supergirl and her inclusion in the movie, Matt?
Um, I I I love the performance and the way she was done. I have no complaints about her at all. It I think this kind of again goes back to the like way the movie was like uh marketed and stuff. We got so much in the trailers of Zod and Supergirl and Keaton's Batman and stuff. And I think it kind of set and even with you guys like hearing from people that had seen advanced screenings and talked about how great her performance was. I think her performance was great, but I don't think it made the movie for me like Ezra's did. Um,
Yeah.
we I feel like that's what a lot of people are probably trying to say is like, oh, Supergirl, like, was the best performance or whatever, and to me, that's not the case. There's nothing wrong. I cannot think of any like nitpicks with her, the way she was written or anything. Um, but I and there's ways in my head like I can like if someone says maybe if she kind of felt a little underpowered to me um because of like how quickly and easily I guess she got beat, but I know that's kind of writing, but at the same time like in my head I headcanon I have like, well, Clark spent like 25 years in yellow sunlight and Kara has spent not even 24 hours in it,
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of to me kind of explains that. But I thought she was fantastic. I thought she looked great. I would not be opposed to seeing more of her in the future if that's a possibility.
There's speculation, so maybe. Um, but yeah, I mean, just there's so much in this movie that we could talk about. But unfortunately, I mean, we can't, we don't have the time to focus on every little thing. But I did want to really focus on the ultimate lesson that Barry learns through, from the two Batmen and from Supergirl and from everything that happens in this alternate timeline is that he can't change the past without affecting the entire timeline. And we've seen that throughout the film. But the beautiful scene in the grocery store, we've alluded to it. So I did want to give a moment to that. When Barry realizes he has to let his mother die. I absolutely adore the scene where he goes to the grocery store and he had gone in earlier and gone back to the grocery store and put the tomatoes in the cart so that, what happened to his mom doesn't happen. And he realizes that he has to change that. So he goes back and he has this little tender moment with his mom, and she doesn't even really, she just thinks she's being very kind to a stranger. She doesn't know that this is her son. But it's such a touching moment between mother and son. So Matt, I'll let you start off with this one. What did you think of this scene and how they kind of wrap up the movie here with basically Barry, without saying it, saying goodbye to his mom?
I thought it was one of Ezra's best performances. And who's the actor that plays his mom? Um, hers as well. Um,
So it's
I think
Maribel
both of them
Verdú.
did it. Maribel Verdú, she did a fantastic job as well. I think the tendency maybe as a writer or something is to kind of or as an actor is to kind of show some recognition or something in her face, like she realizes like she is talking to her son and stuff. And in some iterations of the story, I feel like that would make sense, but with this one, I didn't really get that. Like, I just really felt like she was genuinely connecting to a stranger, someone she had no idea like who it was, and kind of putting herself in the same thing, and then just speaking truth about how she feels, like, or how she would treat her son, and Barry realizing that and knowing that she's talking to him, but without actively knowing that she's talking to him.
Mm-hmm.
um and I got a very genuine sense of emotion from Ezra's performance and from hers. Um, and it's only undone slightly by the messing with time addiction that he demonstrates, like there, at the at the end, kind of undoing that, like I've already said.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I loved the scene.
Absolutely. And Joe, what did you think? I know this is one of your favorite parts.
Yeah, I mean, I've already pretty much touched on this scene. I love it. I think the emotion is there. I have gotten ugly tears all three times I've seen the scene. And I'll be honest with
Mm.
you, after seeing the first early screening, when I got out of the screening, I had a text from my mom saying like she was, my mom lives like 2 minutes from me, and she was like, she went shopping for me for something, like she got me like cold cuts for the week for work because she was going to the store, and she's like, you can come pick it up on your way home. I'm like, Mom, it's gonna be late. Like I don't need to pick it up on my way home. It's fine. And she's like, no, I'll be up. Seriously. When that movie ended, I'm like, oh, I have to stop and see my mom now. Like there's no way.
That's awesome.
And I gave her a hug, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna have to see this movie with me eventually. And I explained to her a little bit about what the movie was about, and I just, I gave her a hug and said goodnight and told her I loved her. And, you just, I like what these movies can do for us in real life, and I think more people need to bring these emotional beats to their own lives. And this is super corny, I get it, but I think it's important for us to keep perspective in our own lives, to take these, entertaining works of art and make us better people. And I think when a movie can do that for myself, that means a lot. And
Yeah,
I love it.
I wholeheartedly agree. To me, that's the whole point of good literature, of good fiction, is to tell a good story, but to, in the end, like, give us stuff that we can
Mhm.
take
Yeah.
from it, and become better people, or make better decisions.
completely agree. Okay, last thing I want to touch on, because this one's going a little long. I knew it would though. So the multiverse aspect of the film. So we touched on it a little bit at the
We didn't
beginning.
even get to that.
I know, and I did want to bring it up. So we talked about George Clooney popping up at the end. Obviously, great surprise. Got a big pop from the crowd at my screening. But of course, there's this whole scene between the two Barrys and the Dark Flash, where the young Barry keeps going back in time over and over and over again to kind of change this big battle where Batman and Supergirl die. But the more he does it, we see these worlds colliding in the Speed Force, and we see George Reeves Superman, and we see Christopher Reeve Superman, and we see Super. Oh God, what was her name, Joe? The
Helen
actress
Slater.
Helen Slater. We see Helen Slater, Supergirl. We see Nicolas Cage, Superman. We see a glimpse of Adam West, Batman. We see
Mhm.
a debatable who he is, Flash. Joe thinks it's Teddy Sears. I'm not
It's
so
freaking
convinced.
Teddy Sears. There is no way that is not Teddy Sears. I am sorry. I've seen it 3 times now. It is Teddy Sears, and it makes no sense
Well, Teddy Sears says it's not him.
because it makes no sense.
So anyway, I think it's amazing. I did think this was one of the things in the preview screening because they told us we haven't seen everything. I thought there would be more of this, but it turns out no. This is what it is. So just overall thoughts, guys, because I think it's amazing. I think there could have been more, but it's a nitpick. Just because I'm a greedy fan. I love seeing all these different DC variations. So, Joe, what did you think of all these multiverse DC characters?
Well, it's funny because like I didn't even realize we hadn't even discussed this yet, and I think that's because it's a fun multiverse nod in a Flash movie. But to me, this wasn't going to make or break the movie for me. It's just a fun little segment that throws in some stuff, some winks, some nods to pay tribute to some of these characters, and I got everything I needed out of it. Do I wish we got a little more? I think I think it's a missed opportunity to not have Grant Gustin. I think like
I agree.
that Teddy Sears cameo, whatever the hell it was, that could have been just Grant Gustin. Nobody would have cared. Nobody would have batted an eye. Why not? Or at the most, make it John Wesley Shipp. Like it made no sense to be what it was. That's my one big complaint. But other than that, I don't care because to me it's non what's the word I'm looking for? Non consequential. Inconsequential for what the story is. It's just there and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, gotcha. And what about you, Matt? The multiverse DC characters.
I agree with what Joe said. But I feel like more importantly, it kind of just opens the door, um, kind of officially. Like we've had there was the Arrowverse crossover that kind of you know opened the door like officially that all of the DC like things were could exist in the same like multiverse or whatever, but um I think it kind of just opens the doors for anything going forward is kind of fair
Mm-hmm.
game, um and uh gives Mr. Gunn kind of the ability to, and I know that I don't know when, we don't know when uh, that scene at the end with the worlds colliding and stuff, like was it in development, or was it always supposed to be there, like how often it was changed or whatever. But it kind of opens the doors, like I said, for us to be able to, for them to be able to do whatever they want to, going forward as far as restructuring and revamping and things. And um, kind of goes back to the whole bowl of spaghetti kind of scenario. Like they can kind of bring whatever they want to or change, add new things, um, and it still kind of all works like canonically.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, we've talked about the ending. We've talked about the multiverse. I know that there's probably a ton we've missed, but that is where we're going to have to wrap it up just based on time. And guys, we are definitely not talking about this, done talking about this movie. There will be more in the future. I'm sure you guys have thoughts. You're going to send emails. We're looking forward to that. But I do want to kind of put a pin in it here, but I don't want to leave until we get some final thoughts and a battering rating from all of us. So, Matt, we'll start with you. Give us your final thoughts on the new DC film, The Flash, and a battering rating out of 10.
I think it is a wonderful movie. It is a Flash movie, first and foremost, and within uh, the world that it is set, it gives us the uh, the best. both Flash origin story and Flash like Flashpoint live action that I feel like we could have got set in this universe. Um, I said at the beginning, and I told you it does not take my number one spot uh, for DC U movies, but it's a very strong contender for second. And then the nitpicks that I kind of already talked about with the ending scene and some of uh, the issues with like the Batman performance and stuff. This probably seems like some heavy points to take off, but the number that just sits in my head, because I knew you were going to ask for a Batarang rating. I knew it. So I've been thinking about it ever since I saw it Thursday night. And I still stick with 8 out of 10. So 8 out of 10 Batarangs for the Flash for me.
Nice. Awesome. All right. And what about you, Joe? Final thoughts on the Flash and a Batarang rating?
I think this movie has everything that I wanted in it. It has the humor, it has the emotion, it has the action, it has 3 Batmen. I love it. Actually, it has 4 if you count Adam West. I forgot. So I love it. I was actually prepared for the Batarang rating myself. For the first time. Usually, I completely forget. I can't believe I'm upping Matt with this. I'm going 9 out of 10. I really did love this movie. I mean, I've seen it now 3 times, and I'm pretty confident in it's going to stay there. So yeah, I'm going 9 out of 10. I love it, and it disappoints me that for some reason people are hating on it. And nitpicks aside, it did not detract from my enjoyment at all. So there you go.
Nice. High praise. I like it. Okay, so far as myself, this is the movie I thought we were going to get, but there's nothing wrong with that. The trailers did not lie to us. They kind of laid out everything it was going to be, and it was. There was a few things in my initial screening that I was like, I wish we could have got this. I wish we could have got that. But then on the second screening, knowing what it was, I think it worked a lot better for me. I really, really loved my second viewing of this. And funnily enough, the second viewing crowd was a lot more enthusiastic than the preview screening crowd. So that was fun. I loved seeing, of course, the multiple Batmen in the movie. Michael Keaton was great in his return. It's like he never missed a beat. Ben Affleck is still my favorite Batman, and I thought he was awesome too. But overall, this was just a really good Flash movie. I wanted to see the Flash, and that's what we got. So I'm very happy with the film that we have. Don't know where it's going to go in the future, but that doesn't matter. I'm just basing it off of this movie alone. And I actually fall right between you guys. I am at an 8.5 out of 10 Batarangs. So, yeah, I mean, either way you look at it, high praise, an 8, a 9, and an 8.5 out of 10. So we all enjoyed The Flash. And if you've made it this far and you haven't seen the movie, what are you doing? Go see it. Go check it out. It's still available in theaters and will be for a while. But yep, highly recommend The Flash. And that's where we're going to end it for today. So guys, Matt, Joe, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun. And Matt, if you would, tell everybody where they can find you. I think you're still kind of taking a hiatus though from social media, right?
Yeah, you shouldn't really be able to find me anywhere
Okay.
that I can contact you. But I am in contact with Eric throughout the week. So if you guys have any questions, direct it to the podcast contacts. And just mention me in it, and Eric will get to me, and you'll get my response.
Matt is like the shaggy-headed, bearded Michael Keaton. He's recluse. Nobody knows where he is or what he's doing. All right, Joe. Thank you so much again for joining me, being my co-host here. So why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and I'm glad Matt was able to join us for this one too. It's fun when we have an extra person on. So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as JForn11, and you can find me on Facebook as Joe Fornarato, FORNAROTTO.
Awesome. And as for myself, you can find my personal accounts on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at mecarter89. That's mecarter89. The show can be found at TFR Batpod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Once again, if you have thoughts or opinions or suggestions for the show, send us an email. That's tfrbatpod@gmail.com. We do have some messages we're not going to get to today, but we will get to those on the next episode. And then if you want to support the show, the best way to do that is to leave us a rating and review on wherever you get your podcasts, at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Just leave us a rating and review. It helps the show tremendously. But for myself, for Joe, for Matt, thank you so much for joining us, guys. And go see The Flash. And until next time, make sure you keep that bat signal lit and pointed skyward. Batman was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane, and is the sole property of Warner Bros. Discovery. The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast, is in no way associated with Warner Bros. Discovery, DC Comics, or DC Studios. The thoughts and opinions of the participants of this show are their own, and do not represent the companies that they work for. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
Like I said, I feel like he could go back and he could rearrange the spaghetti again.
That's not good.
Someone has set off the fire alarm in my home.